We focus on conveying value and interpreting great books from around the world.
Hi, this is Sally with the Book Talk.
Today we're diving into the novel by Natsume Soseki. I Am a Cat. About Natsume Soseki, what Chinese readers might know best is that famous anecdote from his time teaching English in Japan. He asked his students, "How do you say I love you in Japanese?" The students translated it literally as, "I love you." But Soseki responded, "Japanese people wouldn't talk like that." He said, "Simply saying, 'The moon is beautiful tonight,' would suffice." But Natsume Soseki isn't just a sentimental writer. In reality, he's the undisputed leading figure in modern Japanese literature, known as the national author. His face is on the Japanese 1,000 Young Bill, which shows his high social standing in Japan. At the millennium turn, Asahi Shimbun ran a poll for the favorite Japanese authors of the past 1,000 years, and Natsume Soseki came out on top. I Am a Cat is Natsume Soseki's debut novel and his claim to fame. This novel made Natsume Soseki hugely popular. Over the next decade, he wrote a series of literary gems like Kokoro and Sanshiro, cementing his status in modern Japanese literature. Lucian reviewed I Am a Cat, describing it as imaginative, exquisitely written, light, free, and full of wit. Zhu Zuoren also remarked that he's quite witty with a unique charm. Typically, amusing novels are fun to read but can be shallow, not leaving a lasting impact or sparking cultural reflections. However, Soseki's book is both fun and insightful, using a cat's viewpoint to depict the Meiji-era transition in Japan. It sharply reveals and satirizes societal issues, but with unique humor, it mellows the bite, captivating readers. Now, let's explore this classic of Japanese modern satire together. The writing of I Am a Cat happened somewhat by chance. Back then, Soseki had just ended his studies in London, came back to Japan as a teacher, and he was miserable in England. As he put it, among English gentlemen, I was like a poodle in a pack of wolves, leading a wretched life. And it didn't get better back home. Be a teacher then. Students say they can't understand his lectures. He's not as good as the previous teacher. The money he earns is just enough to get by. And back home, his relationship with his wife isn't harmonious. I, I still have money. He thinks his wife has mental issues. She thinks he has mental issues. Of course, this is mostly just playful banter between spouses, but his neurasthenia is real. He often can't sleep well and is on the verge of a breakdown. It was under these circumstances that his friend, the editor of the Hototogisu magazine, gave him an idea. Write a cheerful novel as a way to distract himself. And so, the first chapter of I Am a Cat came into being. The opening line is, "I am a cat, but I have no name yet." A defiant opening that later became a famous literary quote. The term zajiya, you might have heard it in TV dramas. It's what ancient eunuchs called themselves, giving a sense of both pride and feigned humility. The Chinese translator Yu Lei's choice of this word can be said to be very precise. This is because the Japanese original used by Soseki, gobai, comes from an ancient Japanese minister's humble address to a new emperor, seemingly devout, but with underlying pride. Although you are the ruler, and I am the subject, you are a new ruler, and I am an old minister. If you don't understand something, you'll have to come ask me. It has a self-satisfied air, just a cat, yet it grandly announces its identity, afraid of being mistaken for a human. Isn't this just pride? But the first line is full of vigor, while the next one loses steam.
What makes you think you're such a precious cat?
So, it doesn't even have a name yet. This opening line sets the tone for the entire novel. On one hand, this self-aware cat treats humans as strange others, scrutinizing and commenting from a high perch. The master and his friend's every move becomes the source of the novel's humor. On the other hand, the name in the latter part can be seen as a symbol of human civilization, yet the cat's master doesn't give it a name. Okay, if thus there's a sense of alienation between this cat and human civilization, it is precisely this distance that makes the cat's critiques sharp and incisive, dismantling the so-called lofty civilizations self-constructed by human society, touching on the crux of cultural clashes in the Meiji era. What? What? So, who is its master? This nameless cat's master is named Kushami, an English teacher who somewhat resembles Soseki himself, not wealthy, but content with leisure, retreating to his study every day after school. The cat follows behind him, watching him sleep in the bedroom, listening to him receive guests in the living room, occasionally glancing at the master's diary, and sometimes being teased by the master's children. Now, nothing too dramatic, but quite peaceful and interesting. On the first day, Kushani's friend Maite comes to visit. Maite is an aesthetician and quite the character.
Koshami is painting and says that painting shouldn't rely on imagination alone. One must sketch from nature. He even quotes a famous saying by the Italian master Andrea del Sarto to prove the importance of sketching from life.
Kushami listens and is impressed. The next day, he starts sketching the cat, waiting for Maite to visit again. Kushami grabs Maite to talk about his painting experiences, saying, Andrea is truly a master artist. But Maite replies, Andrea and the whole sketching thing. I made it all up, leaving Kushami quite embarrassed. Chapter 1 tells this little story. The cat's perspective as the protagonist is unique, combined with Kushami's naive honesty and Maite's love for teasing. Their interactions spark great fun, so it became widely popular after publication. Thus, Natsume Soseki wrote chapters 2 and 3, and readers applauded even more. And so, Soseki continued writing, stretching what was originally a short story into an 11-chapter novel, forming the work we see today. The reason for using stretching is that the cat's daily life, discussions, and reflections are inherently flexible. They can be lengthened by adding details or ended abruptly at any time. As the author himself said, I am a cat is like a sea cucumber, hard to tell where its head or tail is. Therefore, it can be said that this novel's structure is very loose, with little plot development or suspense to speak of. Now, modern readers aren't used to this structure. They find it worthy and lose patience. But isn't life just like that? Whose life is full of climaxes and thrills? I Am a Cat downplays the plot, highlights the fun, and uses small details and rich dialogues to paint a picture of life around intellectuals in the Meiji era. And the protagonist of this household is Kushami. He has two frequent guests, the aesthetician Meitei and his student Kangetsu. Through these three characters, Natsume Soseki condensed his observations and critiques of intellectuals of that time. These three can be said to be the sole characters of the novel. As mentioned earlier, the character Kushami is, to some extent, a self-portrait of Natsume Soseki. Every day after school, he loves to retreat into his study, snoring away inside, while his family doesn't dare disturb him, thinking he's hard at work. The cat is quite envious. He remarks that being a teacher is such a cushy job. It's the way to go for a person. He sighs about the teaching profession, saying, if you can sleep all day and still be a teacher, then couldn't a cat like me handle it too? The reason for writing this way is connected to Soseki's own experiences. After returning from studying abroad in England, Natsume Soseki became an English teacher, but he disliked the profession. He felt that the teaching content was very mechanical, and students didn't enjoy listening. Yet, he vented his frustrations fiercely in the book. As a teacher, Kushami isn't good-looking. He has pockmarks on his face, a poor complexion, and always suffers from stomach problems. He also has some quirks. He makes strange noises when brushing his teeth and sings tunes loudly while in the bathroom, earning him the nickname Mr. Toilet. He lacks perseverance. He learns painting for 2 days and then drops it, and doesn't stick with learning the violin for long either. He taught English for 9 years but can't write a decent English essay. Even his treatments for stomach problems change every day, with none lasting. He particularly dislikes capitalists. He scorns teachers who flatter investors for better treatment. Although he hates a money-driven society, he does nothing but complain. Kushami is stubborn yet weak, pedantic yet aloof, and also clumsy with words, often being teased by friends as in the earlier story. But his friend, the aesthetician Maite, is clever and sharp-tongued. He enjoys fabricating anecdotes about celebrities and inventing non-existent famous quotes. Even when commenting on novels he hasn't read, he can speak eloquently and impressively.
Even when dining at a restaurant, he invents dish names and asks the waiter if they serve it, making the waiter anxious and afraid of looking ignorant.
This guy is also narcissistic. If someone casually compliments him, he gets carried away and says, Since you praise me so much, let me reveal a bit more of my vast knowledge to you." When he and Kushami get together, one acts as the bully, Dugan, the other as the one who silently takes it, Penguin, like in a crosstalk performance, criticizing the world, mocking people, and being cynical. Compared to Maite, Kushami's student Kangetsu has his own brand of foolishness. Kangetsu is a student living at Kushami's house. Maite calls him the greatest genius under heaven. He studies science and engineering, researching every day. But what exactly? One is hanging mechanics and the other is grinding glass balls. Hanging mechanics, hanging as in execution, mechanics as in physics. It's the mechanics of hanging executions, very scientific. He starts from the history of hanging, covers different execution methods, sets up unknowns, lists equations, putting on an academic show with utterly nonsensical content. And what about grinding glass balls? It comes from Kangetsu's doctoral thesis titled The Effect of Ultraviolet Rays on the Autonomous Movement of Frog Eyeballs. When Meitei first heard this topic, he exclaimed exaggeratedly, "Truly worthy of the great Kangetsu!" Even the frogs would pop their eyes out hearing this topic. Kangetsu ignored him and continued, "To study frog eyeballs, I need experiments. To do experiments well, I must simulate them with glass balls. But store-bought glass balls aren't perfectly round, so he has to grind truly spherical ones himself. From dawn till dusk in the lab, no weekends off, grinding from New Year's Day until autumn. When Kushami asked when he'd finish, he said 10 years if fast, maybe 20 if slow. In short, Kangetsu's life is debating worthless topics and researching meaningless subjects. These three spend all day chatting about everything and nothing. So how does the story progress? Though the plot is thin, amid their banter lies a slow-burning storyline. Kaneda. Kaneda is a local tycoon, running industries, wealthy and powerful. Being nouveau riche, he fears lacking culture, so he seeks a scholarly son-in-law for his daughter. He sets his sights on Kangetsu, but is Kangetsu actually reliable? Mrs. Kaneda decides to visit Kushami to gather intel. Mrs. Kaneda, accustomed to arrogance, assumes everyone respects her family's power.
At Kushami's house, she looks down her nose at everyone, showing zero courtesy.
But Kushami won't play along. What's so special about capitalists?
What's so great about money?
As Maite would say, isn't knowledge the noblest thing in this world? We focus on conveying value and interpreting great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally with Book Talk. Today we're interpreting the novel I Am a Cat by Natsume Soseki.
I am a cat.
About Natsume Soseki, what Chinese readers might know best is that famous anecdote from his time teaching English in Japan. He asked his students, "How do you say I love you in Japanese?" The students translated it literally as "I love you," but Soseki responded, "Japanese people wouldn't talk like that." He said, simply saying, "The moon is beautiful tonight," would suffice. But Natsume Soseki isn't just a sentimental writer. In reality, he's the undisputed leading figure in modern Japanese literature, known as the national author. His face is on the Japanese 1,000 yen bill, which shows his high social standing in Japan. At the turn of the millennium, Asahi Shimbun conducted a poll for the favorite Japanese authors of the past 1,000 years, and Natsume Soseki came out on top. I Am a Cat is Natsume Soseki's debut novel and his claim to fame. This novel made Natsume Soseki hugely popular. Over the next decade, he wrote a series of literary gems, like Kokoro and Sanshiro, cementing his status in modern Japanese literature. Lu Xun reviewed I Am a Cat, describing it as imaginative, exquisitely written, light, free, and full of wit. Zhou Ren also remarked that he's quite witty with a unique charm. The teaching profession again sighs, if you can sleep all day and still be a teacher, then couldn't a cat like me handle it too? The reason for writing this is connected to Soseki's own experiences. After returning from studying in England, Natsume Soseki became an English teacher, but he disliked the profession. He felt the teaching content was very mechanical and students didn't enjoy listening, yet
So he vented his frustrations fiercely in the book.
as a teacher, Kushami isn't good looking. He has pockmarks, a poor complexion, and constant stomach problems. He also has quirks, making strange noises while brushing teeth and singing loudly in the bathroom, earning the nickname Mr. Toilet. He lacks perseverance. After 2 days of learning painting, he drops it and doesn't stick with violin either. He taught English for 9 years but can't write a decent essay. Even his stomach treatments change daily, none lasting. He particularly dislikes capitalists, scorning teachers who flatter them for better pay. Though hating a money-driven society, he only complains without acting. Kushami is stubborn yet weak, pedantic yet aloof, and clumsy with words, often teased by friends as in the earlier story. But his friend Maite, the aesthetician, is clever and sharp-tongued. He loves fabricating celebrity anecdotes and inventing non-existent quotes. Even when commenting on unread novels, he speaks convincingly, quite impressively. Even dining out, he invents dish names, asking waiters if they serve them, making them anxious and afraid of looking ignorant. This guy's also narcissistic. If someone casually compliments him, he gets carried away and says, "The God! Since you praise me so much, let me reveal a bit more of my vast knowledge." When he and Kushami get together, one acts as the bully, Dogen, the other as the victim, Penguin, like in a crosstalk show, criticizing society, mocking people, and being cynical. Compared to Maite, Kushami's student Kangetsu has his own brand of foolishness. Kangetsu lives at Kushami's. Maite calls him the greatest genius. He studies science, researching daily, but what? One is hanging mechanics, the other is grinding glass balls. Hanging mechanics, hanging as in execution, mechanics as in physics. Mechanics here refers to the physics of hanging executions, logically speaking. He starts from the history of hanging, covers different execution methods, sets up unknowns, lists equations, putting on an academic show with utterly nonsensical content. So what about grinding glass balls? It comes from Kangetsu's doctoral thesis titled "The Effect of Ultraviolet Rays on the Autonomous Movement of Frog Eyeballs." When Meitei first heard this topic, he exclaimed exaggeratedly, "Truly worthy of the great Kangetsu." Even the frogs would pop their eyes out hearing this topic. Kangetsu ignored him and continued, "To study frog eyeballs, I need experiments. To do experiments well, I must simulate them with glass balls. But store-bought glass balls aren't perfectly round, so he has to grind truly spherical ones himself. From dawn till dusk in the lab, no weekends off, grinding from New Year's Day until autumn." When Kushami asked when he'd finish, he said, 10 years if fast, maybe 20 if slow. In short, Kangetsu's life is debating worthless topics and researching meaningless subjects. These three spend all day chatting about everything and nothing. So how does the story progress? Though the plot is thin, amid their banter lies a slow-burning storyline. Kaneda. Kaneda is a local tycoon running industries. Wealthy and powerful. Being nouveau riche, he fears lacking culture, so he seeks a scholarly son-in-law for his daughter. He sets his sights on Kangetsu. But is Kangetsu actually reliable?
Mrs. Kaneda decides to visit Kushami to gather intel.
Mrs. Kaneda, accustomed to arrogance, assumes everyone respects her family's power. At Kushami's house, she looks down her nose at everyone, showing zero courtesy. But Kushami won't play along. What's so special about capitalists? What's so great about money? As Maite would say, Isn't knowledge the noblest thing in this world?
Kushami and Mite dislike Mrs. Kaneda's attitude and have no patience for her. Noticing her large nose, they privately nickname her Madam Nose.
They call her the epitome of vulgarity, and the conversation ends badly. How could Mrs. Kaneda swallow this insult? She immediately starts plotting revenge against this pedantic poor teacher. She bribed the students from Rakuyukan to cause trouble for Kushami. Originally, next to Kushami's yard, there was an empty lot beside Rakuyokan Private Middle School. Students often played there and would run into Kushami's yard. When he built a fence, they deliberately hit baseballs over it and climbed over to retrieve them. Sometimes they'd even say mocking and sarcastic things on purpose. Young folks run fast and had it all planned to mess with him. So Kushami never caught them, always getting furious. When he finally nabbed one, they'd claim it was an accident and promise to be careful next time. Even if he dragged them to the Rakuyokan teacher, what good would it do? Yet, adults shouldn't stoop to kids' level, and teachers can't choose students out over this, so they just said fence jumping is rude and to use the front door from now on.
Thus, students often peeked around Kushami's door, and he still had no peace.
But unexpectedly, while Kaneda was scheming against Kushami here, Kanetsu himself used a trip home to quickly tie the knot. The bride was a woman from his hometown. Why did Kangetsu refuse? The book doesn't explain why Kangetsu rejected the Kanedasa's olive branch, but we see he never took them seriously from the get-go. Originally, the Kaneda said they'd read their daughter to him if he got a doctorate, but he, instead, started grinding glass balls for his thesis, not knowing how many years it'd take. After marrying, Meipei asked how he'd explain to the Kanedas. He said, "What's to explain? Marrying anyone's the same."
I never said I wanted to marry, nor did I say I wanted their daughter. I'm good just keeping quiet.
Kangetsu didn't want to marry the rich girl, but naturally someone else did. Kushami's other student, Totara Senpai. Totara Senpai worked in a company's mining department, a budding industrialist. He coveted the Kaneda wealth and charmed the young lady.
At the novel's end, dressed sharp and puffing a fancy cigarette, he proudly announced at Kushami's house, "They insisted I marry her, and it's settled."
After this, it got dark. Cigarette butts piled in the brazier, and the guests who'd gathered at Kushami's for lofty talks lost interest and departed one by one. Here, the cat critiques each character. He says Maite appears optimistic, even playful, but this stems from knowing the world is no longer as beautiful as the ukiyo-e society. Kangetsu marrying might seem proper, but he'll surely grow bored over time. What about the cat's master, Kushami? Through the cat, Soseki half jokes, half prophecies. The master will eventually die of stomach illness. Old man Kaneda will die of greed. After this commentary, the cat meaningfully notes, they appear carefree, but their hearts hold desolation. Thus the story quietly approaches its end. Why does Soseki's writing turn so pessimistic near the conclusion? This relates to Soseki's complex feelings toward the Meiji era and modern Japanese intellectuals. Born 1 year before the Meiji Restoration, Soseki belonged to the generation shaped by it. He said, "The history of Meiji is my history." But what kind of history was it? Japan then embarked on rapid capitalist development. The government promoted, enrich the country, strengthen the army, and industrial promotion, implementing full westernization. Old orders and values were overthrown. Everyone pursued industry, society looked only forward.
Like Kaneda, those with big earnings and mentions gained respect.
They acted imperiously, while Kushami's home had dilapidated walls. Even his cat's food was less oily than the bicycle shop cats.
How did people like Kaneda amass wealth?
The author reveals 3 secrets: lack of perseverance, empathy, and shame, abbreviated as the 3 deficiencies, which the cat mocks fiercely. I, the cat, don't know what force spins the earth, but I know money is what spins society. In such a money-centered society, intellectuals face 2 choices: blindly chase trends and lose individuality. Surrender to capital, swept along by the times, like Kushami's colleagues, or cling to old traditions and scholarly integrity, keeping distance from capital, yet even these achieve little. Some complain fruitlessly like Kushami, others mock life like Meitei. Then there are those like Kangetsu, doing utterly useless things. So-called research intellectuals are conflicted and helpless, drifting with the tide. Thus, for Natsume Soseki, this widely praised Meiji era filled him with distrust and satire. This distrust and satire find classic expression in Kushami's essay about Yamato Damashi. The essay is short, about 60 characters. It begins, Yamato Damashi, Japanese shout like consumptives coughing violently. Newspapers discuss Yamato Damashi. Even thieves say Yamato Damashi. Then it asks, what exactly is Yamato Damashi? Answer, well, Yamato Damashi, you know. Later it asks, is Yamato Damashi triangular or quadrilateral? Everyone talks about it but has never seen it. No one knows what it is. After all that, we still don't know what Yamato Damashi is. This baffling essay precisely reflects the baffling nature of Yamato Damashi. Japan had just become an advanced nation and won several wars, undoubtedly becoming somewhat arrogant. But to sit equally with Western powers, during rapid westernization, people's minds underwent great turmoil. Some Japanese professors even said Japan had no history. Its history began now. Abandoning tradition wholesale to embrace present glory was like a castle in the air, beautiful but hollow. So, Japanese invoked Yamato Damashi to cater to rising nationalism, but what actually was it? Meiji-era people lacking spiritual core naturally couldn't answer. This was a jumbled era. Old and new, past and present converged at Meiji's crossroads. In the novel, intellectuals are aloof yet timid, laughable yet tragic, disliking society but unable to change it, filling idle days with chatter to mask their futility. As the book says, these folks are like loofahs, swaying in the wind while pretending transcendence, yet still weighed down. As useless as Kushami in the novel. When troubled by the Rakuyokan incident, various people advised him. An old classmate urged him to follow the crowd and money. A doctor suggested hypnotherapy to regulate nerves. A philosopher friend advised inner peace for tranquility. But which path to take? Kushami didn't know. Just like confused intellectuals facing every choice in the tide of the era, hollow and lost. He only knows he must change, but has no idea where the path lies. Thus, Soseki could only have the cat say, how the master chooses is his private affair. If he remains unchanged, he'll surely reach a dead end. At the story's end, the cat forebodingly says, in autumn, most leaves fall. All things must eventually die. Soon after, the cat sneaks wine from its master's house, first feeling tongue numbness, then a drunken euphoria, accidentally falling into a water vat. It struggles briefly before thinking, since I can't escape, why bother, and gives up completely. Thus it drowns in the water vat. The novel that began with the cat's defiant I am a cat declaration concludes in this desolate manner. Through our analysis, we see this novel's foundation is profoundly pessimistic. Society bustles while intellectuals flounder anxiously. Yet pessimism needn't wear a gloomy face. If sorrow is the novel's bones, humor is its skin, all the confusion, all the silent defiance hides behind banter, jokes, and buffoonery. In this regard, Soseki proves a master of language. The humor manifests in two ways. First, the fragmented, aimless dialogues. Second, the alienation and distance created by the feline perspective. First, the fragmented, themeless discussions. For example, one day, philosopher Dokusei, Kushami, and Kangetsu discuss life and death. Kangetsu says, when born, we arrive without thought, but when dying, everyone suffers terribly. Logically, they should delve deeper here. But the author subverts this. Meitei immediately compares life, death, to borrowing money. Borrowing requires no thought. Repaying makes everyone scratch their heads, immediately derailing seriousness. Meitei prepares to lecture aesthetically. Noses need holes to breathe. Why protrude? Kangetsu earnestly says, I'm all ears, while Kushani retorts, your nose is flat, it doesn't protrude. Meitei, choked by Kushami's remark, touches his flat nose. What profound theory does Meitei actually have? His conclusion, protruding noses evolved for convenient nose blowing, constant blowing shaped high, firm bridges. But then Kusami interrupts again. Look, your nose is fleshy and flat too. A nonsensical matter made solemn by Maite, showcasing intellectuals' useless verbal skills perfectly. While usually helpless with problems, Kusami surprisingly excels at sarcasm. Soseki's self-deprecating humor about intellectuals hides in such subtle details. Similar dialogues fill the novel, fragmentary, perfectly capturing casual back-and-forth chatter. What makes these chats engaging is their improvisational, themeless nature. Just as you tire, someone interrupts. Topics veer wildly, some amusing, some uncomfortably accurate. The second humor source, Cat's Eye View narration.
Through feline eyes, humans become absurdly amusing.
First seeing human faces, the cat muses. Hairless faces resemble boiled kettles. Sneaking into Kaneda's mansion, it observes. His entire face is flat, like pressed against a wall in childhood. 40 years later, it remains dull and unremarkable. The cat critiques humans with naive candor, society with razor precision, criticizing land privatization. Heaven covers all, earth bears all. What labor did humans contribute to create them?
No contribution, then why claim ownership?
If land can be sold by area, why not slice and sell air too? Since air can't be sold nor heaven divided, isn't land ownership equally absurd? Only through feline perspective can human convention's absurdity be exposed. The cat despises human selfishness and greed. Modern humans scheme constantly, awake or asleep, for personal gain, without a stronger species to humble them. Who knows how far their arrogance will spread? You could say Natsume Soseki projected part of himself onto Kusami and another part onto this cat. Kusami is dull and withdrawn, while the cat is sharp, proactive, and transcendent. Kusami could keep hiding in his study, muddling through each day. But how should such a proud, insightful cat coexist with this world? Thus, the author had the cat drown drunk and prophesied Kusami's death from stomach illness, a disease born from inability to digest the external world. Coincidentally, Soseki truly owned a cat and died of stomach illness at 49. This anecdote adds legendary depth to the novel. Modern Japanese literature began in the Meiji era. Before this, Japan had religious and courtly literature, but little social literature. Meiji works focused on petty romances and dramas, remaining narrow, yet Soseki carved his own path. Through feline perspective, he exposed intellectuals' bleak lives with rare precision and scathing critique in Japanese literary history. Beneath the satire lies Soseki's compassion and warmth for humanity. All right, that concludes our interpretation of I Am a Cat.
Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.